So, I've decided that it might be a good idea to make a few non-War Thunder videos. This is the first episode in a series where I explain the early steps and tips that could be useful in some of my favorite games. First up, as you can tell from the title, is Subnautica, an endless blue expanse of mystery and wonder made by Unknown Worlds Entertainment. So, how does one start a first-time playthrough in this vast alien ocean? Well, something to note is that, as with all things in life, there are certain early priorities. This isn't one of those games where you get a tutorial level with no risk. The clock is ticking from the moment you open the PDA. First of all, before even going to either the ladder or the floor hatch, get acquainted with your escape pod. You'll be spending a fair bit of time here for a fair amount of time, so you might as well get used to it. There are 6 major locations in the life pod to get accustomed to. Above you is a roof hatch with a ladder to let you reach it. This isn't really notable aside from being a way to leave without immediately being underwater. On the floor, another hatch. This one is much more efficient since you don't have to jump off of the roof. But if you aren't ready to take a dive just yet, the roof one can be nice. Standing on the floor hatch and looking at the ladder, looking directly on the other side of the ladder, is a storage bin. This container holds 2 nutrient blocks, 2 water bottles, and 2 flares, and has space for plenty more. If you're in freedom mode, which I'd suggest for a first game as it helps you learn the ropes, then the food and water are useless to you. Looking at this container, to your left is a first aid cabinet. This will create a medkit capable of replenishing 50% of your health about once per in-game day. Now behind you is the fabricator, your best friend in the game. This is used to refine basically all materials to a usable form, make many of your tools and such, and even cook food. The final wall is taken up by a communication station. Pay this no heed for now, it's useless until you repair it, and we don't have that tool yet. However, once you do have it repaired, it's certainly going to be a useful part for progressing the story, so don't forget about its presence. So, now that you know what the pod looks like, time to get your feet wet. You start in the safe shallows, the only somewhat safe biome in the entire game. Even so, there are 2 things that can be dangerous, so keep your eyes open. Swim around a bit, get used to the controls. How long can you stay down before you have to come up for air, etc. It'll do you good. Now, what are the first priorities? Well, if you're in survival mode, there's food and water, but I'll let you figure those out yourself. Quick hint, both of these can be collected from some form of the fish that you can catch in this area, as well as other sources later on. But what else? Well, air is a pretty good place to start. First, you can only stay under the waves for 45 seconds at a time, and you'll want to increase that as soon as possible. So to do that, you explore the fabricator already, right? Right, good. So let's go get some materials. The first thing you'll want to make is an oxygen tank. The O2 tank takes titanium. To get it, pick up these random scraps of metal. You can turn them into raw titanium back at the fabricator. Luckily, this material is easy to find in the shallows, so unless you get caught under a gasopod's cloud with no oxygen, as I have, it should be no issue. Back at the fabricator, you can make the oxygen tank. You'll figure it out. I can wait. It's a video after all, feel free to pause. After you have the tank, it automatically is equipped, giving you much more time underwater to carry on with your life. Great. Now, what tools will be useful for survival on this alien world? Scanner, a knife, a repair tool, flashlight, sea glide, fins. There's a lot to do. So, explore the fabricator some more. You won't find the recipe for the sea glide, that comes later. But the other things should be there. But you may be asking, battery, silicone rubber, acid mushrooms? Where am I going to find all this stuff? Well, for the most part, they're fairly straightforward. Titanium you should already know by now. For glass, collect quartz, which looks like this. Again, fabricator to refine. For copper, you'll need to break a few rocks. These limestone outcrops, which the game probably has pointed out to you by now, hold either copper or titanium. Acid mushrooms are these strange lads here. Don't worry, picking them is harmless. Just don't stab them with a knife if you value your skin. Silicone is made from the oily compounds in creepvine seed clusters, which are these glowy yellow things. Don't venture too far, there are stalkers about, but it might be nice to collect. The biggest issue will be the cave sulfur you need for the repair tool. You're going to need to get a bit risky for this one. Crash fish are these pesky assholes here. They'll charge you if you get too close, and they explode after a short fuse, so don't get caught up in the blast. I'll elaborate more on how to counter them in the second section of this video. After evading the crashfish, though, you should return to the pod that it came out of. The sulfuric powder should be inside the petals. Might take a few attempts, though. Some of them are missing the material. Still with me? Good. Because we are just getting started. There's a lot to do if you're going to make it out of this alive. Next up on the agenda is the scanner. This is, in my opinion, the single most useful tool in the entire game. Have it on your hotbar at all times. This tool allows you to collect data from scanning fish, as well as blueprints from scanning various fragments dotted around the seabed. This is where you get the recipe for the sea glide, as well as the beacon, which are two of the most important baseline objects in the entire game. So explore a bit. Scan some things. It will benefit you in the long run. Greatly. After you've got a few blueprints, it might be a good idea to explore a bit further from home. The grassy plateaus are home to some more essential fragments, as well as outcrops of sandstone. Why do you need sandstone? Because that's where you get gold and silver, of course, and you're going to need those in bulk. Once you have a bit of each, it might be time to build a place to put all those things you're collecting. Use your silver and gold to make a builder. Might take a bit to get used to, but it's a very useful tool. Obviously, it's how you build bases. Inside of these bases, you won't have oxygen replenishment unless you're above water or have power. However, what they're incredibly useful for at this stage of the game is storage. Just look how many lockers you can fit into a single eye-shaped corridor. Look how much stuff you can cram into one of those lockers. This brings me onto my next point. Nothing left behind. Might seem tempting to just leave a bit of titanium or a shard of scrap metal where you found it, but don't. Trust me, you'll need those later, so you might as well start stockpiling now. Every time your inventory is full, go back to base to dump it out. Subnautica is a very drawn-out game anyway, so feel free to take your time. In a standard playthrough of this game, I tend to build 2 major bases, each of which take over 400 titanium to construct, so you might as well have some on standby. Reduces the pain of having to look for it later. Once you've collected enough materials, blueprints, and so on, you'll realize that you're just about ready to build an actual base. A staging area from which to engage with the rest of the game. And that, my friend, is where I shall leave you, and simply wish you the best of luck. This isn't a full walkthrough, and the game is so much more fulfilling when you explore things for yourself. The fish in Subnautica are mean. There are 101 different ways that they can rip your guts out through your sternum. So let's talk about how to prevent that with some of the early enemies. First up, you'll be seeing gaspapods almost immediately. These guys are simple enough, they aren't actually aggressive, but if startled they'll release a cloud of toxins into the water that can kill you in about 2.5 seconds. Just avoid the cloud and you should be fine. Crashfish are a bit of a different beast. They're fast, far faster than you are, and they are very territorial. When they see you, they'll charge out at top speed, turning themselves into a living torpedo and explode. It can be a real nuisance. You have 2 main options to deal with them. First, you try to stay far enough away to take minimal damage from the blast. Just swim for your life. Alternatively, you can take advantage of their poor turning ability and try to dart past them without getting hit. They'll explode automatically after a short timer, and there's a decent chance you'll be well out of the range if you can pull this off. Stalkers are the first actively aggressive enemy in the game, but are simple enough to deal with. First, note that they are attracted to shiny objects. Just don't hold anything and they're far more likely to leave you alone. If they do attack, however, they're not incredibly difficult to avoid. Simply hold the S key as well as either A or D, your choice which. And just keep them centered in your screen for a while, and fairly quickly they'll lose interest. No big deal at all. They can't turn sharply enough to actually get to you if you do this, so while they're uncomfortably close, they're actually harmless. Sand sharks are dangerous, though. They can shave a massive portion of your health away with a single bite. But don't worry, these guys are easy. Just stay away from them. They're slow as heck. They're ambush predators, not chase predators like the stalker. This means that if you just avoid these clouds of dust, you should be golden. Biters are barely a nuisance when alone, but have been known to swarm where they can be quite dangerous. For these little bastards, take a combative approach. Just backpedal away from the swarm and slash at them with your knife. They go down with a single hit, so they should be out of your hair in no time at all. That's actually it. There are only a total of 5 dangerous species in the safe, shallows, kelp forest, and grassy plateau biomes, Sorry to say, but anywhere further out and you're on your own. With one exception, which deserves its own section. The Reaper Leviathan is terrifying. For all of the majesty and beauty of Planet 4546b, it's also dangerous as hell. The Reaper fulfills all of these obligations. It's surprisingly gorgeous to watch it go, but it's not fun to get in its sights. There are, of course, far larger and more deadly species in this world, but they don't have the same suppressive fear factor as the Reaper. For those larger species, I often simply sit among them and watch, but the Reaper, it shakes me to the core. So, let's talk about that. How do you deal with a 55-meter sea snake full of teeth, claws, and muscle? It becomes a lot less scary once you know. First of all, though, what makes these things dangerous? They can do things that almost no other enemy in the game can. To start with, raw damage. A Reaper will two-shot you, no questions asked, regardless of armor. Their normal bite attack will shave 80% off of your health. If you have the reinforced dive suit, this goes down to 40%, but that won't save you. If they manage to land a hit and you're under 80% health, whether you have the dive suit on or not, you die. End of story. They grab you, and that is it. Additionally, Reapers can deal substantial damage to the sea moth by latching on and crushing it in the massive face claws that they have. If you're going to Reaper territory, make sure your moth is fully repaired when you do. You can survive a single attack like this, sometimes two. Beyond that, though, you're on your own. Even the Cyclops isn't safe from these giant monsters. You can shave a massive portion of your health off with a single attack, so don't get them mad. That's their secret, though. They're always mad. Few monsters in the game are more aggressive than a Reaper Leviathan. The first step to countering them is fairly simple. Detection. The Reaper has a very distinctive call, which echoes so far through the sea that you'll hear them before you see them. If you hear it, retreat and regroup. Make sure your health is above 80%, you have a fully repaired sea moth, and you have at least one live, uncooked peeper with you. Why a peeper? Stay tuned, all will be revealed. So, once you feel you're properly prepared, take it slow. Canonically, the screaming sound of the Reaper is a form of echolocation, so if you can hear him, he can see you. This isn't the case mechanically, though, and the aggro range of Reapers is actually surprisingly short for the size of the beast. So make sure you see him far before he sees you. What's next? Tracking and avoidance. Once you know where the Leviathan is, keep constant tabs on his location. If you're unsure, use your directional hearing. Skirt around the edges of his territory. Stay low. Be cautious. Everything will be a lot better if he never attacks in the first place. If there's an alternate route, consider taking it. But what if the Reaper sneaks up on me? Don't worry, it won't. You can tell when a Reaper is close enough to potentially aggro from the sound of the roars. If it goes from the simple distant echoing to a close-range, angry bear charging roar from the depths of hell, you're probably about to be beaten senseless. So if that happens, what do? You prevent it. There are a few last-ditch methods that can be used against the Reaper. If you have a sea moth with the perimeter defense system, even the lowest power charge will instantly detach a Reaper's crushing grip. If you have torpedoes, those can also cause some major issues. But if you're on your own, minus sea moth, your last line of defense is a peeper. Not a last meal. Peepers seem to naturally be a soothing creature to many of the monsters of the deep. They're used to tame stalkers, and they can be used to avoid Reaper attacks. When going into Reaper territory, have a peeper on your hotbar. If you hear that bone-chilling final attack run roar, switch to it instantly. The Reaper will simply pluck the peeper from your hands, consume it, and continue on his way. This won't work forever, though. Use the distraction this creates to escape before he decides the small fry wasn't filling enough, and leg it. The most important thing to keep in mind for a Reaper encounter is not panicking. These creatures are all muscle, no brain. Screaming in terror certainly won't get any pity from them, but calming down and thinking rationally can allow you to evade them indefinitely. So make sure you treat these majestic death tubes with the respect they deserve. Remember, anytime you're near one, it's his area, not yours.